Hello, everybody. My name is Paul Daly. I'm the Director of Photography of Season 3 of The Righteous Gemstones, and this is the Go Creative Show.
Hello and welcome to the Go Creative Show, a podcast for filmmakers. My name is Ben Consoli, and today we're speaking with Paul Daly, the director photographer of The Righteous Gemstones Season 3. We talk all about the series, all about this particular season as well, and it is one of my absolute favorite shows, so I fanboy a little bit. But what are you going to do? Sometimes that happens, and it's happening today. All things Go Creative Show at gocreativeshow.com. So let's just dive right in because there's a lot to talk about with Paul Daly, the director of photography of The Righteous Gemstones. So I'm here with Paul Daly, the cinematographer for The Righteous Gemstones, Season 3, which to me, and I'm a fan of this show. I have watched every season. I'm obsessed with it. And I came into Season 3 with really high expectations, and you delivered. I got to tell you that. So welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks so much, Ben. Nice to be here.
This is the most insane show. Like every episode, you think to yourself, okay, I know it's going to get crazy, but every episode takes it to a level where it's beyond what you ever thought would happen in that episode. You never know what to expect. It keeps you surprised. It keeps you guessing. I mean, what a great project to be part of. You must just have such a blast on this show.
Yeah, I mean, it speaks for itself, doesn't it, really? Although I'm in the same boat you are. I get the scripts. I'm like, oh, my God, how are we going to do that? Are they really going to do that? It's not really a monster truck, surely. It's like, yeah. It's not really motorcycle ninjas. Yes, it is. Snowmobiles? Yeah, we're going to get some of those. That's what it's like.
I love it. Was there something for this season that you got the script and you immediately were like, there's no way this can happen? Maybe there were many, but is there one you can point to that from the script you read and you thought you got that pit in your stomach, like, what? How are we going to do this?
Yeah, I have my doubts about the technique for the last two episodes. Like, okay, swarms of locusts. You know, how? There's only so much you can do with VFX. Sooner or later, you've got to take photographs of this stuff. How do we do that? And it worked. We did it.
So for those of you that haven't seen the show, and even if you had, just a refresher, the whole season kind of culminates to this idea of Baby Billy's Bible Bonkers, this TV show, this game show. And you know that you're going to see it as you're watching the season, but you don't quite know what it's going to look like or what's going to happen. So you're kind of waiting for it. And it comes in the last episode, but it's disrupted by a giant swarm of locusts kind of taking over and destroying everything. Earlier, before we started the interview, you were telling me that it's a biblical reference, which I vaguely know about. But I'd love to just hear from you, what is the significance of the locust? And then how did you actually handle filming that scene?
Well, the significance, I'm not a Bible expert, but I do know there were swarms of locusts in the Bible and all that type of thing happened. So it's very much metaphorical and then physical. It actually happens. As far as shooting the scene, they actually found a locust expert, which was pretty interesting. It's an Australian fellow who lives down south somewhere. And they got him on the phone, and he said he can provide X hundred number of these things. We need thousands of them. So we then started to experiment practically. We have Bruce, our VFX supervisor, said, this is what I can do. And so effects, the physical effects, props and what have you, used half pieces of paper clips, clothespins, painted them black, and experimented with stuff through Ritterfans. And they wound up using like peanuts, like packing peanuts, and blasting them all over the place. And I think to great effect. It was really, really impressive. So it was trial and error, but it had to happen quickly. And it worked. We used a lot of interactive light. So it had to look, because we're in a game show set. So you need to believe that there's insects between the lights and the subjects. So we experimented with flashing lights, blinking lights, dimming lights. So it really looks like everything's interactive. And I think it worked.
Have you ever done anything like that before?
No, I don't think so. What's tricky about it is you just don't get to see what it is you're making the effect of. You see, that's what was challenging. We can do, as a departments and crews, we can do so much. But without actually seeing locusts fly by, it's like, oh man, is this going to work when they lay the stuff in? but it did work.
So you're saying that practically, now obviously there was some visual effects to make it make more of them, but for practically the objects that were flying around in camera were the packing peanuts, or was that just used? Oh, no way.
Yeah. And to their credit, these guys experimented. They have fans all over the place. They blast them. We do a scene, sweep it all up. We can't use the same ones again because there's dust and crap everywhere. So they'd start again. And they'd reset in like 15 minutes. It's incredible.
Wow, that's awesome. So the challenge that you were facing there was that you needed to have realistic shadows for all of these moving objects all over the place. And people, the talent needs to react to something. So you got to have some physicality to it. That's
right. Yeah. And they used, for various tighter shots, they would glue like real ones on our people. And then the packing peanuts are flying by, and then you've got the VFS aspects, and the lights are flashing, and extras are freaking out, and people are panicking. I mean, it really came together very well.
How much time did you have to shoot that scene?
We built that set on a warehouse, and I'm going to say we were there, I think, a total of 7 shoot days. It was certainly in that world. It was a big part of our schedule.
Yeah, you can tell watching this season that the show seems to have really upped it when it comes to budget. I mean, you guys, it's ridiculous how much you had access to this season. Although the previous seasons seemed to have quite a bit of budget as well. But this one, it seems like it was taken to the next level. The sets seemed bigger. The set design seemed a little bit more elaborate. Am I just sort of imagining that, or is that the case? Did you have...
No, you're absolutely not imagining that. It's an expensive show. And I believe that everything goes down the lens, that you can see where the money's spent. I think you've hit it on the head. The production designer, Richard Wright, speaks for himself. It's phenomenal. And he was a DP himself, which makes things very interesting because he's thought about these sets for a long time, designed them, made models. So in his head, he knows where the master is. He knows how it's going to be covered. So the stuff is always fantastic to shoot. It's a really, really excellently production designed show. It's all production design, really. Well, wardrobe, obviously, but you know what I mean.
I want to talk to you about the theme of this season of kind of the kids coming into their own. The whole season is sort of based around the father has kind of given up control a little bit. The kids have gained control, but they don't know what they're doing. And it's their constant reliance on their dad's approval and their dad's guidance. And throughout the season, a lot of mistakes are made, but eventually they kind of find themselves. And I'm curious to see if there's something that you did in the lighting or in the cinematography that paralleled the growth of the kids throughout their story arc.
Yeah, 100%. So I don't think it's wrong to say that this season was about Judy and BJ's relationship.
Yeah.
And it's funny, but it gets very dark. And then it gets super awkward, and then it gets super uncomfortable. And there are some things there's nothing funny about it. It's like, this is horrible. This guy's completely humiliated. He's cuckolded. He's embarrassed. He gets his ass kicked. And we shoot it that way. We let the actors bring the comedy. We bring the drama. And I spoke to Jody at length about that. He said, "Let's do it." So we did, and I think it looks that way.
Yeah, it certainly does. Can you talk to me a little bit more about kind of maybe the way that, like, were there changes throughout the season, throughout the story arc in framing or focal lengths, or just the way that you approached filming that sort of lended itself to not just, Judy, but in her relationship, but kind of the whole cast of characters with the 3 kids?
Yeah. So Michael Simmons, Michael Simmons was the director of photography that I took over from. So Mike sort of established a beautiful look. So when we got to season 3, my thought was, well, let's change it up a little bit. Nothing revolutionary, just make it evolutionary. Stuff that really inspires me are like late 60s and 70s British and American films. So one particular film was a film called The Ipcress File, which is an old Michael Caine picture. And it was the first film I ever saw, but I realized something was different, the way it was shot. So I asked the camera operators to watch that movie, and we used that as our reference. Not often, our overs don't always match. Our masters are short-sighted. We're wide and close. We're never telephoto, that kind of thing. Nothing groundbreaking, just a gentle shift, that's all.
And I think it's also interesting too in this season because the first two seasons you're establishing the church as it is. You're learning about the father. You're learning about the his wife that passed away. But there's a change in leadership, and with that comes a couple of new sets and just kind of new designs. And there's like a different kind of slickness to it, like the I don't know, for lack of a better term, I guess the conference room where the kids sit and they have their big murals behind them and all that. So you're introducing kind of a new way of managing the church and envisioning the church. And I think with that came some changes in cinematography. So it's interesting to hear your references of how you got there. Why did you think that film applied so much to what you wanted to do?
Well, because the film, the Ipcress File, is about a reluctant spy who's Michael Caine, and he's sort of an anti-hero. Our show is, like you said, is sort of changing of the guard. And the way Richard builds his sets, that high ceilings, beautiful light fixtures, incredible freezes behind them. Those things are three-dimensional freezes.
Those are real?
Yeah, that's all real. That's all real. So cameras on the floor, which lends itself to exactly what I'm talking about. We're shooting large format. So your wide shots are magnificent. Your frame's half again as big. Everything we do, everything I should say Richard does, lends itself to how we photograph it. It kind of photographs itself, to be honest. It's like, look at this. It's beautiful. And then the reverse with the lit map of the world is incredible, isn't it? I mean, what a crazy detail. Who would do that? And he does. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I think your production designer does a really good job of understanding the qualities and the types of stylistic demands that this type of character, these three kids, would do. I mean, people that come from extraordinary wealth, that lack a lot of taste and style, and want to have things around them that make them feel more powerful, to kind of hide the fact that they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah. Interesting, right? Because it's a bit of a cliche, but money will buy you a lot, but it won't buy your class and it won't buy your style. Yes. Right? Bring on the girls. Like Judy, the wardrobe stylist, Christina, just changed Judy. She just went from crazy to just a little uncomfortable. It's always just a little bit over the top. Jesse, his stuff is very expensive. It's just not quite right. Just a tiny bit inappropriate. It all works. I don't know how much thought goes into it, but there's a great deal. I can't imagine what they go through. But
well, cool. the thought that goes into the cinematography, and I'm sure there are also things that you're doing that help support this idea that these characters liken themselves to these grandiose figures. I noticed a lot of shots that are kind of heroic, looking up. But it's interesting because I think the cinematography is like the way that they imagine themselves, but the way that they're acting in the scenes are revealing of the fact that they are very small people who are kind of easily embarrassed. And it was really funny that you went with the type of cinematography that made them feel heroic, the way that they envisioned themselves. I'd love to just get your thoughts on that, because it sounds like obviously this was all intentional, but what got you to that decision?
Well, I think it's everything I say is going to sound, everything's derivative, right? It's all been done. So I think I talked to we have 4 directors. I talked to the directors. What do you think about this? The key grip, Lee. This is how I think we should move the camera. What do you think about this? The gaffer. This is what I think. Let's change the light and let's do it like this. It was a very collaborative way forward that we did it. And I think what worked well was we framed the best shot we could frame and let the actors do what they do. Does that make sense? We didn't change anything to make it funny. We let them take care of that. We would just make interesting, cool frames. And I think that advanced the comedy. It advanced the absurdity, to your point. When something's going completely wrong, but it's beautifully framed, it's a bit more interesting than on the shoulder and shaking it, which is maybe a bit more traditional, if that makes sense.
It does. It's like it's more out of place. You feel the awkwardness more when, like, for instance, to say Jesse's in a moment where he is embarrassed. You're not filming him as though he's small in the frame. You're not filming him from like up high and making him and really trying to push to the audience this idea that he's small in the frame and embarrassed. And you still film it as though he's this grandiose figure, and his actions tell you that he's embarrassed. And I thought that was just such an interesting choice, because it was always, the cinematography seemed always from the standpoint of the characters, the way that they internalize themselves. It was sort of an interesting choice to me.
Yeah, it's true. You nailed it. That's exactly how it was done. It was, we all discussed it, and that's what we did. It was we, not me. You know, it was super cool. Great the way it all came together. And John Goodman, you hit it, you nailed it. Ben, John Goodman, we always shoot low. It's, we'd reference Russian propaganda pictures. That's Goodman. That's the boss right there. And I think it works. You're not confused about who's in charge, even if he's reluctantly in charge.
I want to talk about the gear package that you chose for the Righteous Gemstones. Can you walk us through the cameras that you used, lighting, lensing, filtration, if you are putting any filters on there? How did you create the look?
The look, we're large format. We stayed with our original package, which were signature primes. What are they? Supremes, the Aries. What do we use here? Hold on. The signatures. So we started with the signatures, the Aries, and then I brought in some Supremes just to change things up. And
sorry to interrupt, but when you say started, did you mean this season you began, or you're talking about over the course of the 3 seasons?
From season 1. So Mike did all his tests, and I came to a couple of them in New York, and we looked at them, and they're absolutely beautiful, the signatures. A little bit warmer than the Supremes. With filtration, I found you can actually reduce your filtration because they're a little softer. They drop off. The bokeh, the background is so definitive. Nothing turns into a blob back there. It's they're wonderful lenses. What I found with the Supremes is they're cooler. And they took the filtration a little differently. The way they handled the soft effects or the Hollywood Black Magics was slightly different. We found that we would tend to drift for the daytime lit scene, whether it was real daylight or lit daylight, we'd lean toward the signatures. And for the nighttime stuff, we'd lean toward the Supremes. And it just sort of evolved that way. And I think quite successfully.
What was it about the Supremes that were just better suited for the daytime?
Well, the Supremes would actually use at night.
Oh, I'm sorry. I had it in reverse, but...
Right, yeah, it's because it's sort of counterintuitive. They're cooler. I just like the way they worked at night. We would never shoot particularly wide open because we always wanted to see where we were. We never really wanted to be telephoto, and we never wanted to be so out of focus you lost a sense of what's going on. Again, back to the production design, you just want to see it. But wide, we'd shoot our tight shots, on a 35 or a 40. Would be in there. So regular, that's sort of a 28 on regular 35.
Yeah.
I just think we just responded to them at night. They were cooler, a little sharper, and they just, I think, lent themselves to night work a little better. Saying that, the signatures are incredible. If you made me pick, either would work. I just prefer the Supremes at night.
How many cameras do you roll with on, a typical scene?
Oh, always 3. But then we'd have multiple units. Those 2 would have 3. And when we were in the Coliseum, I believe we had 12.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But we're never less than 3 cameras, which is interesting because we don't always shoot 3 cameras. I mean, because as I just mentioned, we are wide and close. It just doesn't lend itself to multi-camera setups. So often we're single camera, and we're scheduled that way. The assistant director, Randall, understands. That's how we do it. The directors have no interest in cross-covering and things like that. Do it very traditionally.
And what did you say your camera package was for this?
LFs, ARRI, large format cameras. Yeah, and the lenses we had from the Supremes and the signatures, everything from an 18 to a 100 or a 125 and everything in the middle. Zooms, we had a couple, which really saved those for the Coliseum type stuff.
Yeah, to get like punch-ins and get people's reactions.
Yeah, well, get a television look, like to actively zoom. We'd only use a zoom if we were zooming. Yeah, we didn't use zooms as primes.
Yeah. Can we talk a little bit about your philosophy with camera motion on the Righteous Gemstones? We had talked earlier about, there was very purposeful angles to help certainly sell the production design, but also sell the characters a bit. But what's your general thought and philosophy on the motion of the camera in the series?
Well, I mean, it's the same as everybody else's. It needs to be motivated. If you're moving for the sake of it, then there's something wrong. There's something wrong with the scene. Fortunately, with us, everybody has some type of monologue. Everybody's delivering some crashing statement. And we have a particularly talented dolly grip who we would all, his name's Philip Dan. We'd watch we'd all watch the blocking, obviously. I'd go over to the A camera and Phil would say, what do you think? Phil would say, oh, this has got dance floor written all over it. It's okay, let's go. Let's do that. And honestly, that was how we do it. This track, dance floor, crane, and Philip would be a big part of what we could achieve.
Oh, that's awesome. Same question, but regarding lighting. There's a very naturalistic look to this at times. Certainly in the church, it's a little bit elevated because there's a whole production going on. And in their conference area, there's it's natural in that it is the light in the room, but the light in the room is kind of out of control. So talk to me just about your lighting philosophy for the series, what was inspired by, and maybe even how it's evolved over the course of the 3 seasons.
Well, I think for myself, I work with a gaffer, Steve Thompson, who's been around a long time. He's a very talented lighting gaffer. He knows what he's doing. I'm of the opinion, if it looks like you were never there as a director of photography, then you've achieved it. Like Gordon Willis, right? It didn't look like he did anything, but it looks amazing. That's sort of the goal for me. I would rather that you say, "Wow, good looking frame," but you can't really say why. That's my lighting. It's big and there's plenty of it, but not necessarily. I'm not making a statement with the lights. And then,
I'm picking that up too. It seems like, well, you also have the benefit of the areas where there would be wild lighting. There should be, like the Baby Billy, Bible bunker set and the church set, and there's a lot of areas for event lighting, I guess, if you will. So you have those opportunities to play around in that field. Are there any particular sets or scenes that created a particular challenge for you by way of lighting or filming in the Righteous Gemstones that would be interesting to hear?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things. There's something that's sort of interesting. The gaffer, Steve, and his reading gaffer own a lighting company. And they do, obviously, movies, but they also do event lighting. So they have lasers. They've got bizarre moving lights. They've got stuff you see in the circus, not necessarily on movies. So we get this fantastic crossover. So we have really interesting mix match of Bulldog Lighting's lights. Do you know what I mean? That's really cool. So there's, like I'll say to Steve, God, it'd be really interesting if we could, like a poor man's process, for instance. We do a lot of it because there's so much driving, but it's difficult to do daytime convincing poor man's process. At night, it's easy. Daytime, it's hard because the light's pretty consistent. But what does happen is when you're doing 60 miles an hour and there's a bright sun and it's going through the trees, that thing's flashing, it's strobing. So how do you replicate that? So Steve said, I got an idea. They got this new instrument. It's called a Domino. It's like the biggest moving light I've ever seen in my life. It's a 1,000-watt LED, which is big. Unfortunately, it weighs 150 pounds. So I spoke to Lee, the key grip, like, can you rig this thing? He's like, yeah. And that's how we did our poor man. It's like blast the flashing light and a 9K on a crane. yeah, that is what's cool about this place.
That's awesome. That's
all about gemstones. Yeah, it's like I've got an idea, and those two guys are like, okay, I think we can do that.
Oh, that's awesome. So for your driving scene, you're incorporating this moving light. That's really neat.
I would challenge you, apart from in the monster trucks, I would challenge you to find the poor man's, which is a misnomer. It's absolutely enormous, the setups. But you tell me which is poor man's and what's actual practical driving. I bet you can't.
That's awesome. Now, challenge accepted. I'm sure someone in the audience will say, oh, I know the scene. I'm going to send you stills. Send us stills. We'll see.
Yeah.
I love that. So there's a couple of scenes that are evening exteriors. And I'm always sort of fascinated with the way cinematographers approach this because everyone kind of has a different idea of the best way to handle evening scenes, the color of the moonlight, what's realistic, all of that stuff. So I'd love to hear from you about your approach to night exteriors in The Righteous Gemstones. And I certainly want to talk about Cousins Night. So let's get into it.
Right. Yeah, that's a great reference. So Cousins Night, again, it's all practical. That's a magnificent, I guess, mansion, really, in the middle of the country. And where the banquet is and the mayhem and where Baby Billy does his rehearsal where he's trying to sell baby bunkers, that's just a beautiful, like, one-wall barn, really. Everything's open. There's a roof and a fireplace on one side. That was Danny's episode. He's like, I want to be able to shoot 360 and I want multiple cameras going and I want to do everything. It's like, okay. So what we did, myself and I've done this before, actually. I spoke to Richard Bright, production designer. I said, right, we're going to light this. Christmas tree lights. Christmas everywhere. And we'll put those on a little chase. So they blink. You can look up at them. If you see them, great. If you don't see them, great. You're looking out to, there's a lake and there's trees like on 2 or 3 sides. So we lit from condors to trees. We backlit the lake so you see it. We skipped into the lake for the walking stuff. It's really traditional, but big. There's no real, no secret trick. Fortunately, it's big lights and big lifts.
Yeah, it's always that conundrum of like, okay, if you're doing an exterior at night and the shot is wide, it's like, it's either going to be all black or you have to light back there. And then, how much light is realistic? There's only so much light that a moon can create in a realistic way.
I don't think you have to worry about it. Just make the best frame you can. Make it look beautiful. I don't care where it comes from. It's just, I want detail back there. I can sell that as anything you want. You want it to be a street light? We'll put some sodium vapor color on it. If you don't, just leave it blue. And if it doesn't look real, drop a couple of doubles in it. All you need is a tiny bit of detail. I don't worry too much about why the trees are lit.
So you're thinking that, and obviously it's working because when I'm watching it, I don't have any reservations about it, but your thought is just make it look as good as it can. And if it starts looking strange, address that. But you don't have to obsess so much about the fact that it's lit by the moon. No, or whatever lights are on out there.
And quite honestly, Ben, if people are looking at the trees and not Edie Patterson, there's a problem.
Exactly. That's the issue. You should be paying attention to the talent.
Right. So you understand what I mean. Obviously, I'm doing a little painting with a broad brush here. I think our night exteriors are nice. We work hard on those.
They're beautiful.
Like Cousins Night, for instance, we are inspired by what's happening naturally. So, okay, this works. Beef this up. Slow this down. Spin that around. That's how we approach our night exteriors. Like when we scout it, when we're looking at it, whether people realize it or not, they are inspired by what's there naturally. So half the time, all we have to do is increase what's there.
I want to talk about the Cape and Pistol scenes, which is just so ridiculous. That club is so dumb. It's just the best. It's like exactly the type of club that these characters would be part of.
Cool. Makes perfect sense, right?
I love it. So first of all, tell me about, we had mentioned, well, I guess we can talk about it right now. How much of your sets are practical and how much are built on stages?
Well, just to reiterate, on stage, all we have is Jason's steakhouse, the interior of Eli's mansion, and his office. That's it. Everything else is real. Now, the room where the freezers are, that was built on a college, so that obviously doesn't really exist. Richard built that, but everything else we incorporate what the locations offer. So the Cape and Pistol is the Hibernian Society, which is the most beautiful building downtown Charleston. With a portico and circular staircase and crazy long hallways and high ceilings and absurd light fixtures, but surrounded by portraits. Every inch of the wall is portraits, and you can't touch them. Oh. So it's like, now get out of that. It's that kind of situation.
What'd you do?
Well, we big lights through the windows. You can only go on one side because the other side we couldn't do it. We put up a truss rig, which, I'd have to talk to Lee, the key group, about this, but I think we use more truss than anybody in the Western world because we're always in these locations. And sooner or later, the light's got to come from above. You need truss. We don't have grids. That's how we do it.
Do you enjoy the practical sets more than a stage set? 100%. If I never stepped on a stage again, I'd be fine. Even with all the control you get from a stage. That's interesting to hear.
Well, isn't this the case though? Like, a philosophy, I think, of mine is, if you're not careful, a stage just looks like a stage. There has to be something going on that it looks like you couldn't control. So that's how we work on the stage. Like, I make something that's 4 stops over. If it was 3 stops, it would be perfectly within range. 4 stops is just a little too hot. But that looks like a mistake. So now it looks like you're actually somewhere. Do you see what I mean?
I do. And that's really interesting. I don't think we've ever had anyone break it down like that. So are you saying that you'll purposely put an imperfection in a stage to make it look like a practical set?
Yeah. Yeah, something's a little too hot. And Lee, the key grip, was all over it. It's like, you want to double on that? You want to? Nope. No, leave it.
That is really interesting. But it makes sense.
Yeah, I think it does. Something happened when I was a gaffer. I used to work for a cameraman. His name was Joaquin Baca Asay. He was a really good cameraman. He's a director now, I think. And one day, I would call the stops. I would call the exposure. I call the filtration, because we were shooting 35 back then. And one day we were standing in a bathroom in Long Island, and he put his eye in the eyepiece and he looked in the window. And he put his eye in the eyepiece and looked in the window. And I'd lit the thing, obviously. And I said, well, what's the matter? And he looked at me and said, your lighting is better than mine, but my lighting is real. And I turned on a dime. I was like, I know exactly what you're talking about. And that's when I went from everything perfect to let's do something interesting.
That's wild. All right. So you're embracing the issues that could come. You're embracing the challenges that come from a live location. Does it sort of change the way? All right. So this philosophy changes the way you light in a studio setting. Does it change the way you shoot as well?
No, not really. You're again, our sets are full sets. So we build a house on a set. So we have ceilings, we have light fixtures, we have floors, beautiful parquet floors. There's nothing you can't see. So that's how we shoot. We frame it, find our best frame, then we worry about lighting it. That's how we do it. So I think the scenes in the living room when Baby Billy comes in and pushes the kid across the room and they all come in, and Baby Billy's, he's a little under, but he's got a hot streak across his belly. His wife, she looks great. She's got a heavy backlight, nothing on her face. We want it to look like late afternoon in a country mansion in South Carolina. And I think we pull it off.
Well, you definitely do. I mean, the only reason that I would think they're stages at all is because I just, know enough about the industry that a lot of stuff is on stages. But I think the average viewer would assume all of these places are real. But I'm surprised to hear how many of them are, only because, I don't know, it just seems, and maybe I'm wrong, but it just seems like the control that you would gain by being on a stage makes things move faster. But maybe not. I mean, maybe it's better for the schedule to be in actual locations. What do you think?
Well, let's see. We never not make our days. I don't know. I don't know if it has much to do with speed. I think you just have to have a cover set. I think most people respond to a real location. I certainly do. I know it's tough on the guys. Everything's a pain in the ass. Everything's going upstairs. Everything needs a scaffold. Everything. It's difficult, but I don't think it's deniable that practical locations bring happy accidents, strange architecture, odd windows, things that you just wouldn't come across on a regular 3 or 4 wall set.
Yeah, and I guess it's probably nice that when a problem does arise, you can think to yourself like, well, we can't move that window, so we got to work with it. Whereas on a live set, whereas on a stage, you could at least make the case to move a window or move a wall.
Yeah, or I say, you know what, Pam, right, put it in. Let's have it. We do that. Like, you know, the scene when BJ and Judy are in the bathtub. Do you remember? And gets a little crazy. That's a real bathroom in a real house on the second floor. And most people would say, why don't you just build that on a set? It saves so much time. It's like, well, yeah, you could, but it probably wouldn't look like this. And it looks great, right? But you had to hump the dolly up the stairs. Giant pain in the ass. Nothing was easy, but it looks great.
And you use that house only for that one scene, and that's it?
No, we're all over that place.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. That's where BJ finds the phone and reads the message. That's where he's got those crazy goggles on, where it's what is that?
Oh, so you were using. So that was their house. Like that was
their house. Yeah, it's Judy's house.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, that beautiful staircase. Do you remember the scene where Judy cooks dinner for BJ and he just got his outfit? And she's eating alone, and he comes in on the stairs, and that's that house.
It's a great house.
Beautiful, right? Yeah, but it's a real house on a magnificent estate.
But all of your shooting was in Charleston, or close to it?
Yeah, apart from the NASCAR stuff, which was at Darlington, but everything else is Charleston or the immediate vicinity. Yes.
Well, let's talk about the NASCAR stuff. The season starts off with what, it's the NASCAR stuff in the first episode is really funny and kind of unexpected, but also works with the characters for sure. But talk to me about that. How was it filming on that kind of environment?
Oh, well, I mean, it's like boys and their toys. I loved it. They gave us a couple of NASCAR. Did you get
to ride in it?
I didn't get to ride in it, but I did get to mess around with it. We put cameras all over them, and pulled the body off and put mounts on. The best boy Grip, Jack, he's the master of car rigs, so he was just talk about kid in a candy shop, going mad. So we did awesome wheel shots, and that thing's doing 120 miles an hour. We have cameras on the camera car is going as fast as it can, and it's it's like 85 miles an hour. We really are blasting around in that thing. It was so much fun. I mean, I could have stayed there another couple of days, quite honestly.
How many cameras did you lose?
Nothing. Didn't lose any on that one, but I did lose one. Did you hear about it?
No.
Oh, God. Yeah. Lost one on the monster truck.
Let's talk about it. The monster truck scenes in season 3 of Righteous Gemstone are just, it's out of control. There's so much monster truck stuff. It's teased at the beginning. It carries through at the end. And you have a big, very satisfying scene in the finale episode. I think it's the final scene where the monster truck comes back. It's awesome. Just the way that the season revolves around this truck. And it's also kind of a metaphor for these characters because they just are so imposing and destructive, but there's so much heart to it. And, I don't know. I just thought it was a really interesting choice with the monster truck. But regardless, let's talk about the way you filmed it, and especially your story of losing a camera. I'd love to hear that.
Oh, yeah. The UPM doesn't want to hear about it again, I bet. But,
we'll keep it just between us. It'll be fine.
Yeah. No one's listening to this, are they? That monster truck is absolutely massive. And when I watch it, I sometimes wonder if we didn't get a sense of how massive that thing really is. I think the thing will do like 50 miles an hour. The driver is in this tiny cage. You can barely see. He's got that halo thing on. He does what he can. I mean, the man's a miracle worker, but he can't hit marks. He can get it within 25 feet, but that's really all you're going to get, So we set up numerous scenes. Everything is going great. If things get sketchy, we put the camera on a hothead, so an operator's nowhere near it. So it doesn't die. And then we just put a camera unmanned elsewhere, so a wide camera unmanned. So we did one take. Everything was great. It's the shot where the cow gets run over by the monster truck.
Yes.
So I said, all right, we'll just put a camera down unmanned. We put it down. It was feet away from the previous take where the bloke spun around. We're rolling. I'm at the monitors with everybody, and this thing's getting closer and closer. I'm like, holy shit. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. And then the frame is just full of black tire and then gone. You know?
Oh no.
I just looked at the floor. I was like, oh no. And it was like, it wasn't broken. It was trashed. There was nothing on that thing. It could be salvaged except the card. The card survived. So we got the footage.
Of all the cameras. Well, so what were you mounting on the cars themselves, NASCAR and also the monster truck?
The LFs. We use real cameras. We don't use GoPros. Yeah, we use real cameras. Yeah. On the monster truck, you can't rig to it. There's nowhere to rig. So they built a vehicle that was on, imagine like a mechanical bull that moves around. They built a chassis of one of those on that, where our actors can get into, and then we could put real cameras on it. That's how we had to do the driving shots with the monster truck. It was impossible to rig to the thing. And also our actors can't drive it.
Oh, that's so cool. Well, the season is just excellent. I absolutely love this show. And, as we're rounding out our interview, I'd love to just hear from you what scene you're the most proud of. Like when you watch the season back, when you watch the series back, is there a particular scene that you just think, like, I really nailed that? Like, that's awesome.
I try not to think in terms of I nailed it. We
nailed it. Sure.
You know what I mean? But it's a weird scene that probably no one paid much attention to. But my favorite is the scene when the cousins go and find Peter, who's holding a meeting in like sort of like a Boy Scout shack, when a guy gets the ear cut off.
Yes.
That's my favorite. So that's an actual place. It's actually like a hootenanny place where guys turn up and they play violins, and it's in the middle of the woods. I mean, it's an actual spot. So what we did was hang old-fashioned shot light fixtures, bulbed them up with cool whites. I asked the guys to put a big fan in the window, as if that's the only way to keep it cool. Bashed a couple of great big lights through there, so something's always moving. A little bit of atmosphere. Very simple, but my favorite scene, I'd say.
Wow, that's cool.
I think my favorite lighting, and there was really nothing to it, but I'm of the opinion that it was a very successful scene.
Yeah, I mean, it always surprises me, and it shouldn't, because we've had so many DPs on the show. But whenever I ask questions in a similar vein, they always point to like relatively simple scenes. Like, it's weird. We got a lot of people saying they love these small little dialogue scenes across a table, and it's like, especially when you're thinking about large scale films and TV shows and all the work that you've done to produce these giant scenes, it's always the smaller ones that seem to really stick with the directors of photography.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that. I think there's something to that. It's like Occam's razor, right? The simplest solution is likely the right one. Big setups, they're not that hard. They're just big. And if you can capture a bit of emotion, that's why you're there. I think that's what most camera people respond to. That's what I respond to. If you've done something and the actor just brings it, which actually I could talk about with BJ and Judy. Their stuff got really dark. It got away from comedy, and we lit it that way. And I don't think they would mind me telling you, I would go to Judy and say, look, nothing funny about this night. Do what you want. Just giving you a heads up. Just say thanks. And I'd say the same to Tim Bolts. Like, hey, it's pretty dramatic. Thanks. And then that's what they would do. Not because I told them, but just because I think it was maybe a bit inspiring. It worked very well.
Yeah, it did. Those scenes in particular are really cool, and I think the development of their relationship is really interesting throughout this whole season. Yeah,
it was their season, really, wasn't it? It just of all the cool stuff exploding, Locust. It really came down to the intimacy between those two. She is a bit of a disaster, but she does love him somewhere in there, and he's so weak, and yet he brings it. He brings some sort of weird strength to it. BJ surprises everybody. When he's so pathetic, even Jesse's like, hey man, I feel for you. And for Jesse to say I feel for you, I mean that's bad. That's really bad. Oh, here's a good scene. How about when they were training? Remember they were teaching him to fight, and he said,
"Oh yeah,
bag." Yeah, that was really cool. We shot that in the Coliseum in the steam room where all the equipment to make the ice for the ice rink is. So that's actually a practical location. We just hung a punching bag down there, and that's how we did it.
No way.
Yeah, it was really cool. Like, that's one of my favorites too. I asked the prop people if they could give us some steam, so they just got the things you steam clothes with and hid them behind pipes, and steam going all over the place. That was great. We did it very simply, and Tim does it. It's all BJ.
I love that. Stories like that are so cool when you see things come together in such a almost like a college film way. Just like, get some hand steamers and let's just make this happen. I love that.
You can make it as complicated as you want, right? I'm sure they've got every trick in the book. I mean, there's no budget issues. It's like, this works and it's going to look great. Go ahead. I don't care how you do it.
I love that.
No, I don't mean to be demeaning about their department. I mean, they've got everything under the sun. It looked fantastic.
Well, sometimes the simple solution is the right solution. I love that.
Occam's razor. We're back again.
Yes. It's a common theme with you, Paul. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, the show is called The Righteous Gemstones. All 3 seasons are on HBO, or on Max, I guess is the new way we're calling it now. And if you haven't seen the show, you absolutely have to. But my guess is you probably have if you're listening to this episode. But now that you've heard Paul talk, go back, rewatch some of those scenes. I know I certainly am. And how about this? Let's take Paul up on his challenge. If you find the scene that is what did we say? It was going to be the practical driving scene versus...
Yeah, you tell me what's practical, you tell me what's poor man's.
I like that.
I've already told you that the monster truck is poor man, so that doesn't.
So that one doesn't count, but the others do. So send us a message on social and let us know, and we'll see. We'll see. Maybe we'll figure out a prize for it or something, or maybe we won't. Just the glory of knowing you're right is enough. So, Paul, thank you so much for joining us. We'd love to have you back for your next project. What are you working on?
I think we just got renewed for season 4.
Yes.
So hopefully they'll have me back for that.
I love that. Well, there's no reason not to. You did a fantastic job, you and your entire team. And thanks for being on the show.
Thanks so much, Ben.
All right, I want to thank Paul Daly for coming on the show to talk to us all about The Righteous Gemstones. I love this show, and I thought our conversation was awesome. Let us know what you think on Instagram. You can send us a message there. I want to thank Connor Crosby for producing the show. He's with Ignition Visuals at ignitionvisuals.com. And of course, Dave Siegel for mixing, mastering, and making the show sound so good. You can find him at siegelsound.com. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, where you can not only hear the show, but see the show. So I encourage you to check that out there if you aren't doing that already. All Things Go Creative Show at gocreativeshow.com. And if you want to follow me on Instagram and Twitter, I am at Ben Consoli. I'm doing a lot with a band, 3 Second Chances, where I'm a musician and a singer, and we're releasing albums and music videos and all sorts of stuff. There's a lot of excitement going on there. And my production company, BC Media Productions. You can find all information about everything at Ben Consoli on Instagram. I want to thank you all for joining us today, and we'll see you next time on Go Creative Show, a podcast for filmmakers.